What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Investing Bros. This is the afternoon live show. We got a lot to discuss in today's video. The prices of Bitcoin and crypto, while starting with upside this morning, have kind of cooled off here a little bit. The market is still extremely confused which direction we're going to see the prices go. But ultimately, you want to know who's winning this entire confusion? That would be BlackRock. They are using all of this situation to gobble as much Bitcoin supply as they can. And if we're not careful, they're going to own a lot more of it than they really should. And we're going to talk a little bit today. Saying they would ruin Bitcoin is probably a little dramatic, but there is some things that are unfavorable about BlackRock holding a large amount, as you could imagine. We'll discuss just how scary it is that BlackRock is acquiring more and more Bitcoin and what we need to be looking for in the future as far as to see where the danger starts and stops with their owning of it. But before we get in there, I'm going to introduce my co-host, Mr. T-Shroom from down there in Gainesville, Florida. T-Shroom, how are you feeling today?
Well, Tim, I'm feeling embodied and better than I deserve. I really am. Embodied. Well, because at first you could just see Tim and you could hear my voice, but then the voice was embodied by yours truly, T-Shroom.
Okay. And strange way of putting it, but I'm tracking.
It's okay, Tim. I've got a great. I'm going to come back from this awkwardness. I've got a great quote of the day here from one of your favorite comedians, Will Ferrell. He said, "Whenever someone calls me ugly, I get super sad and hug them because I know how tough life is for the visually impaired." What do you think about that one, Tim? It's a good one.
That's pretty good. Will Ferrell is he's a good one. He's a really good one. I am a fan of his movies for sure. I mean, has he ever done stand-up comedy? I feel like he would crush it. I would definitely watch. I don't know if that's his genre of entertainment, but the movies he produces do turn out to be good ones. I like that quote. That's a man with speaks a lot of confidence and assertion. So it's a good one.
So he did one where he did an entire HBO special impersonating George Bush. Have you seen that one?
Well, I mean, he's been a part of SNL and he's been a part of comedic teams, but I don't know if he's ever done. I mean, maybe he's done stand-up comedy. I don't know. He definitely didn't make a career out of stand-up comedy.
This was like a highly produced, like it was a mock speech, kind of like a documentary. Honestly, I haven't watched it in years, but it was fantastic. It had me chuckling very hard, cackling even. I don't think it was PG, so just be careful. Don't put it on with the little ones.
Just let the children just run about.
And of course, some of the themes, as you can probably tell from this one, some of the themes are kind of making light of maybe more serious themes. So just it's Will Ferrell though. It's not going to cross too many lines. Be aware.
Yeah. Well, let's get into talking some crypto, T-Shirt. Unless you have anything else you want to discuss. Is there anything else on your mind that you want to get off your chest before we dive into the crypto stuff?
I mean, I'm better than I deserve, much else good. Other than that. There's not really much else to me. I love crypto and I'm better than I deserve. Those are the two dimensions of T-Shroom. So,
interesting stuff. Well,
and I love steak.
Let's get in here, guys. You guys know new flow of the show. We're going to do just a kind of quick opening of what's happening in the market. We will then take a look at the news, and then we'll jump back in and do some TA later on in the show. And today we should have some good time for a lot more Q&A from you guys. We'll take a look at some of your favorite altcoins, what you guys want to talk about. Let's start off with Bitcoin, though. With a bounce earlier, like I said, we came down touched. If you guys have been watching the channel, we have some solid ratings here with some levels. We touched my solid level of Bitcoin starting at the high end of it up here towards 38.5. But as you zoom in here, take a look. And I'm not saying that we're done necessarily. We'll take a look at Bitcoin TA a little more in depth later on in the show. But we did come back into a former support zone. Remember, we kind of had this discussion last week. Would Bitcoin lose this 41.2 that we had a wicks down to? We'd never had a candle body close below it on the daily chart. Well, we did get that. And now after hitting my solid support level here at 38.5, we've rejected at this level and temporarily pulled back down. Can we make a move to the upside? We'll have to take a look at that a little bit here later. Ethereum kind of making similar moves here. Now, I don't have the same levels drawn here, but again, kind of flirting with this support level, this bottom level support for Ethereum. Are we going to be able to hold, or are we going to start falling even further to the downside? Not going to be surprised. I'm going to spoil some stuff. We're going to talk later. I'm not going to be surprised if the bulls do make a stand here and we do make a little bit more of a bounce here. We've been talking about a potential dead cat bounce coming into crypto the last couple of days. Well, we saw the beginnings of it late last night, earlier this morning. But this is not a dead cat bounce. I mean, this is like a dead cat that just hit the ground and maybe its stomach just kind of bounced slightly off the concrete. No, a real dead cat bounce. We're talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum getting back up to levels that will start to convince the noobs of the world, the people who only know crypto maybe for the last couple of months. They'll start to believe that the bull market is back on and be convinced that we're going to go crazy up to the up high regions. But don't be surprised. We'll take a look at some levels in here that you can look at for Ethereum. Cardano's a similar boat. I mean, again, the markets all kind of look similar, although Cardano really hasn't pulled back much. Pulled all the way down to 44 cents late last night. Wiccan down there got back up to my level perfectly. I had a long trade in on Blofin T-Shroom with 48 cents was my take profit. Now I entered at 45, so I didn't get that perfect 44-cent bottom, but 45 is not bad. Look at where this wick goes to. In fact, let's look at the Blofin chart. Let's see where the top wick gets to. High of 48.02 cents. I was the top on that trade right there. Now, I think we're gonna go a little bit higher, but I did have to pat myself on the shoulder on that one. Link is also making some moves. I made a great video this morning on Link. You guys know I've been doing the 8:30 videos this morning on how low we can go. Go check out that Link video. You guys have loved the Cardano and Solana one. I don't know why YouTube just didn't get Link out to as many people. We do not have as many views, but the comments, everyone who's watched it has absolutely loved it. The audio was a little weird, so you guys stick with me. Someone had messed with my audio this morning, so that will be fixed for tomorrow. But go check out my chain link. Next buy level I'm looking for there. With that said, though, as a whole, we'll just wrap up the chart section for here. We'll get more into it later. Everything's pulling back slightly, but on these micro terms, we're still sitting at a level where we are setting potential higher lows here, which could see the trend and this dead cat bounce continue to the upside. We'll take a look more in depth after covering the news, but that's what is most important today is what is the news saying? What are we looking at? How are people reacting to the recent price movements? And for that, we're throwing it over to T-Shroom to dive into those details.
Absolutely. Well, Tim, of course, the charts are going to speak for themselves, right? They're going to go up, they're going to go down, but they're going to do so in lockstep with what the news is saying. And we had CVO on yesterday, and he took kind of the opposite position. But I'm a news junkie. I do a live show every single morning at 9 a.m., and so I'm a big fan of trading the news. So let's get into it. Bitcoin is poised for another run if Fed cuts rates. This is according to CoinShares, a European asset manager. It's released its latest annual report. Let's get into some of the details here, some quotations from CoinShares. With the U.S. Federal Reserve likely to cut interest rates in the first half of 2024, Bitcoin alongside gold could see increased appeal. The report concludes, indicating a shift in investor focus towards fixed supply assets. Of course, that would include Bitcoin and other fixed supply assets. It's been a long time since we've been through a rate-cutting cycle, particularly one of this magnitude. So we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. That said, monetary easing has been beneficial for risk assets over the years, and that this comes with the U.S. economy is performing well can't hurt. So it's coming at a time where I think the QQQ just hit all-time highs, right? S&P and the Dow Jones both have hit all-time highs in the last 2 months. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, Bitcoin typically exhibits a negative correlation with the U.S. dollar. So the Dixie, definitely something that we're going to be continuing to monitor, but that has been up and sideways. So not giving Bitcoin and other risk assets relief, but still moving up and to the right is the stock market. And Bitcoin, after this big correction, has been mostly sideways in the last few hours, even though the Dixie has been kind of up and to the right, or up and sideways. So that's not it, though. We've got a story here. Bitcoin miner Hut 8 hits out at short selling report. So this is not good. I'm not going to read all the details here, but if you're in Hut 8, this is definitely something you're going to want to be abreast of, something you want to be keeping up with here. Hut shares slid more than 32% on January 18th when short-selling firm J Capital Research said the US BTC merger had the makings of a pump and dump, okay? J Capital notoriously takes short positions and then releases big news, and they've done this all around the world. It's an international operation that they do, and so it's a pretty big deal. Hut 8 Corporation Wednesday morning called last week's report from J Capital a deliberate attempt to spread misinformation about Hut 8, its operations, finance, management practices, and key executives. So this has been updated. It's coming back into the news. It is an older headline, but there have been updates to it. So I just want to bring that to the attention of the viewers. We can move along, though. This is an interesting one, Tim. Bitwise becomes the first U.S. Bitcoin ETF to publish their address of its holdings, okay? So this is going to potentially be controversial, maybe even be off-putting to kind of the bigger institutional investment crowd, in my opinion, because it seems like they're giving away data that you would want to keep secret. However, it's almost inevitable with how easy it's going to be to kind of track this for on-chain analysts. So Bitwise playing an interesting card here, being the first to publish the address. And you're probably understanding this right, but let me break it down. Right, when the Bitcoin is custodied for you through these spot Bitcoin ETFs, I believe Bitwise is doing this through Coinbase. Most of the big 9 that have been issued, they're doing it through Coinbase, except Fidelity, who's custodying it themselves. When they're custodying it, they're putting it in an address for you. And you can see here in this tweet, it's showing that there's north of just under $500 million in dollar value being custodied for Bitwise, right, under this address. So we'll see. We'll see how the market reacts to that. Bitwise already pretty competitive, having one of the lowest cost ratios here at 0.2 cost ratio for Bitwise. The only one that's lower, there's not one lower than that. So Bitwise already coming in very, very cheap, and also now kind of coming out with this interesting kind of guerrilla marketing play for those who understand crypto. I just don't know how much that's going to move the needle for Bitwise, because if I understand crypto enough to know what an address is and that it's important that they're sharing it, why I would probably just be capable to buy spot Bitcoin. So that's
you shouldn't be buying spit Bitcoin that much anyway, T-shirt.
I wouldn't do that. That's actually going to wrap up the news, though. I mean, there was a couple of other headlines, but what we try to do here at Investing Bros is kind of push through the noise, right, and bring you just news that's going to affect your portfolio or help you kind of pick and choose what future investments you may or may want to consider doing more research on. So that's pretty much the long and short of it for today.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into the conversation, kind of the title conversation here. Recent news as we continue to see Grayscale just offload everything into Coinbase. Coinbase very much in the news with every aspect of what you can be in the news for now. Of course, they're in their lawsuit with the SEC. They are the liquidity bag pretty much for Grayscale. We see Grayscale continuing to move off stuff over there. And then you see the 2 largest holders, BlackRock and Fidelity, of these ETFs. You see them gobbling up Bitcoin left and right. To this point, $1.9 billion has been gobbled up by BlackRock, over $1.6 billion by Fidelity. If we're wondering why prices keep dropping despite the bullishness that the ETFs are, it's because Grayscale keeps offloading into Coinbase, then Coinbase offloads it into BlackRock. All the while, it brings in the negativity. So you have all these sales and all the positive buying because people want to buy Bitcoin right now. It's just happening over the counter. So there's no positive buying pressure coming in which case it brings us to the concept. This is going perfectly, T-Shroom. This is going perfectly as BlackRock had planned. The price is not shooting up, and they are gobbling a boatload of Bitcoin. I want to kind of open this up for you. I want to hear chat kind of talk about this. What would this mean to you in the future? Is this the secret plan that BlackRock had the entire time? Is it going perfectly? And what could you see happening in the future, positively or negatively, with BlackRock holding such a large portion of Bitcoin to themselves? Because remember, I just want to set the stage for this. Even though they're only buying this to hold for the ETF, this Bitcoin belongs to BlackRock. It does not belong to the buyers of the ETF. So they've, at the moment, again, $2 billion worth of Bitcoin is bought on BlackRock's ETF. yet not a single Satoshi belongs to the people buying it. Every single one of those $2 billion worth of Bitcoins belong to BlackRock themselves, and they're just getting started. T-Shirt, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, Tim, I think that first of all we have to zoom out. I do agree that BlackRock is ultimately getting what they want, right? Which is a pullback so that they can buy lower. But if I'm BlackRock, I feel like I'm probably a lot more capable of manipulating the market to a little bit of a higher margin than just 20%, which is the drawdown here from the peak of that. This is being generous, from the peak of that wick that we got back in January 11th down to where we are now, or where we got as low yesterday, last night, right down. That's only 21% shed, and that's being generous because I'm going all the way up to the peak, right? You would think if I'm BlackRock that I would want to try and buy it a lot lower. That tells me ultimately that we have further to go down from a kind of fundamental standpoint, looking at it from the dimension of just this conversation alone, because there's other variables that may kind of counteract that kind of thought. But ultimately, I mean, it is still intact though, because what has BlackRock and Fidelity been able to do, right? Bitcoin did not shoot up to all-time highs up to 70,000 as I thought it was going to, right? It has come down, right? So just from a binary standpoint, it has done the more favorable outcome, not for retail, right, but for the institutions that feel they are underweight Bitcoin exposure, right? Retail is in. Retail has triple mortgaged their home, right? They're selling their kidneys, right? Everything that they can do to get into Bitcoin, buying that big narrative for the spot Bitcoin ETF approval, right? Everybody was invested to the T. Institutions now, they can't move like that. They're not as nimble as retail on an individual basis, right? So they're having to wait. They're having to pull this back. Now, you and I, we've talked about a lot of reasons for this pullback, but I do think that it does have to do with market manipulation a little bit. But I think also, and I said this on the 9 a.m. stream, I think it was 2 days ago, I was in a response to a tweet, which is there was zero chatter about the grayscale GBTC fee, right, before the spot Bitcoin ETF was approved. There was a lot of chatter around the competition between the yet to be approved ETF applications, right? Eric Balkanis was going out saying, "Hey, look, this is going to the race is on, the Cointucky Derby is on, and it's the battleground are the fees." Nobody was looking over at GBTC and saying, "Whoa, the GBTC are they going to change their fee from 1.5?" Because as I just showed you here, there's not a single fee here that is above 0.8. Valkyrie's is 0.8. That's the highest cost basis. And then you have this slammer of a fee, 1.5, just completely uncompetitive. And in my opinion, that fee alone is pretty much responsible for the fact that we haven't gone up and touched new all-time highs here on Bitcoin. So in the context of the question that you're asking, I think that to the extent that we would try to find a smoking gun for BlackRock and Fidelity market manipulation, maybe Wall Street in general, trying to bring the boat back, I think it would be that, is overemphasizing other parts of the ETF approval narrative. And what was a pretty big unforeseen little bit of that narrative was the fake SEC tweet, right? The hack of the SEC Twitter account that kind of distracted everybody from maybe thinking, hey, why is this one spot ETF grayscale? Why is that fee like more than double all the other fees? And why isn't anybody saying anything about that? I think that is where the smoking gun would be, Tim.
Yeah, and I think it's something that is very played out and very much like it was coordinated, T-Shirt. Like you're right. I think the fees staying so high, not being adjusted, Grayscale, they're not idiots. The GBDC, they're not idiots. They realized when we get this approval, we will have to have this bleeding function that transfers everything. And the truth is, again, it's one of those things just playing off of the mindsets of the retail investors. So many retail investors are still to this moment disappointed, right? I even, to a little extent, I told you guys, I kind of got a little psyched out by this whole thing, right? Because I was one of the ones kind of arguing for, hey, we're gonna have a big pullback, and then there were certain individuals, and I don't want to blame them. Ultimately, I'm the decider of my own opinions. I still thought we were having a bigger pullback, but I didn't think 49 was the top. because I did think there'd be a little bit more bullishness based off of some analysis from people who were a lot closer to the ETFs being approved, the whole process. They even kind of echoed this overwhelming amount of bullishness. And I should have been a little smarter, T-Shirt. The truth is, in hindsight, which everything's 2020, you should have known with an exuberant amount of bullish feelings, you got to become a contrarian and you got to trade against it. Well, the same's going to be happening towards the bottom. Why am I kind of actually still feeling like we're going lower? Because right now, there's kind of some neutral feelings right now. Some people still think we're going a lot lower. Some people think that this is the bottom. I've actually seen a couple different influencers kind of saying, I called the $49,000 top. Now I'm calling it the bottom. Don't get trapped down here, you bears. And I was like, okay, thank you for saying that, because that makes me feel better about feeling like we're going to go a little bit lower. We need somebody out here screaming, it's nothing but up from here. You have to have your moon boys in the space. But here's where it gets into BlackRock. Again, will they ruin Bitcoin? I've seen people in here saying, will BlackRock ruin Bitcoin? Yes, they will. Other people saying no one can ruin Bitcoin. It's a little bit of both here. And I'll explain why. They're not going to ruin Bitcoin in the sense that Bitcoin will go away and die, right? They're going to ruin Bitcoin in the sense of, what was Bitcoin created to do? There's a lot of different answers we could give, so I'm going to go ahead and just jump to the answer. One of the big reasons it was created. It was created because the evilness of fiat currency, the corruption of fiat currency that was used to steal the wealth from the poor and give it to the elite so they can control the planet. Bitcoin was put here to fix that, to redistribute that wealth, a decentralized function that encourages people to save, to think about their spending, that levels the playing field so that you don't get rich just because you're a person of influence, but you can grow rich based off of the work ethic and the things that you put into the world to build it, and you get paid for that value, right? Bitcoin is going to fix that, right? But here is a problem. The retail investors have gotten so used to volatility, T-Shroom. We love even our altcoins. I remember a while ago, even at that time, Bitcoin was pretty volatile, but I had a buddy who he bought Ethereum instead of Bitcoin. And it was, a better purchase at the time, obviously. Ethereum's more volatile. But his reason was pretty much like, if I buy Bitcoin, my $5,000, if I buy it, what was the price? Like $20,000, I think at the time. If I buy, $20,000 of Bitcoin, then it'll only quadruple. But if I buy Ethereum when it's at $800 and when it gets to $20,000, I'll have so much more money. I'm like, okay, that's not really how it works, but it shows you the average thought of the retail investor. I want to make a lot of money right now. I want to see these parabolic runs. With the BlackRock getting involved and not just owning Bitcoin, but owning a large portion of it, we're not going to see Satoshi sell. At this point, I don't really think we're going to see the likes of some of our other big holders like Michael Saylor. He's not going to sell. He's going to use to borrow against it. And now we're seeing even more whales come in and purchase these large chunks. They're not going to sell their Bitcoin. Why? Well, why would they need to sell their Bitcoin when they can literally just hold their Bitcoin and then have us retail investors purchase it from them? But we're not purchasing actual Bitcoin. We're purchasing these IOUs in forms of ETF. They can continue to hold it. They will not allow it to dip dramatically, which some people are going to say, Tim, isn't that a good thing? Isn't that a good thing that potentially the 90%, 80% bear markets are over? Well, it is and it isn't. It is if you're smart enough to hold throughout the whole process. But here's going to be the problem. I do think we have one more great parabolic bull run. In fact, I think that this next bull market it's going to be the greatest bull market Bitcoin has ever seen. Not in terms of percentages, but in terms of crazy amount of volume pouring into the space. But I think this might be the last one, T-Shirt. Why? Because BlackRock's going to own so much of the space, and they're not going to want it to be volatile because that would then make their buyers of it upset. They're going to ruin Bitcoin in the sense that Bitcoin will become boring. And I'm actually okay with that. But here's the problem. Retail investors don't like boring. Retail investors want the volatility, whether they think they do or not, because to have the big 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 percentage gains you have to live with the 70%, 80%, 90% pullbacks. And with BlackRock owning such a large portion of it, the volatility of Bitcoin will dramatically be reduced. And with the lesser and lesser volatility of Bitcoin, the lesser and lesser of retail investors are going to want to be a part of it. They're going to flock to more volatile cryptos, which, again, I love crypto as well. But guess what? Down there, that's where people will get wrecked long term. And so when I'm sitting here debating, will BlackRock ruin Bitcoin? I don't mean they're going to ruin the value. I don't mean they're going to ruin my potential holdings of Bitcoin, because I'll understand the purpose of it long term. But I am fearful that an opportunity that we had to level the playing field with wealth and power could slip through the fingers because too many people do not want to only have an asset that they gain 15% a year, 20% a year. That's the future of Bitcoin. I'm not saying necessarily like by 2025, we're done with crazy pullbacks. I still think we potentially could see one more great 50% pullback after a big run. But then I'm talking about the next 5, 10, 15 years. I'm not going to be surprised if Bitcoin, because of BlackRock's large holding of it, you're lucky if in an entire bull market we double in price. You're lucky if in 1 year of holding it, you're going to get 20 to 30% gains on it. Whereas now that's like chump change. I can get 30% in a matter of a couple of days trading spot crypto, other, not Bitcoin, but other cryptos easily. Bitcoin's going to become so massively wealthy. It is where the wealth is going to be. You're going to be forced to trade extremely speculative, crazy cryptocurrencies that are lower, that are harder to really predict and make wealth on. And I'm going to be okay, T-Shroom. You're going to be okay. And the truth is, I think a lot of people listening here are in a complete agreement with me. We understand the long-term future of Bitcoin, but our friends, our family members, they're going to be sucked out of the entire space because they're not going to want to then buy into this, look at gold. Like, have young millennials really been that attractive to buying gold in the last,
Not really.
15 years? Not really. Why? Because there's not a lot, like, it's not going to gain me a lot of money. It's a decent hedge against inflation, but it's nothing special.
It's an old man's market.
There will become a point, I do think, after these parabolic runs. Again, we have a couple more years, but because of the large portions that BlackRock will hold, and they're buying here low, and guess what? They're going to buy a lot more. You want to know who's going to buy? People ask this question: who's going to buy when Bitcoin's at 200,000? Who's going to buy when Bitcoin's at 300,000? I'll tell you who's going to buy: BlackRock. Because they understand that patience is the game. The long-term hodl game is the way you make money. Retail investors don't understand that, though. So it's just me slow gobble, 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 gobble. They'll take all of it, and before long, we'll still have this power dynamic where there's still this like elite class that owns the majority of Bitcoin, the world's store of wealth. And then there's there's the lesser class, and they're trying and fighting to make ends meet. But by that time, their pennies don't mean anything, and they missed out on the opportunity to change their life forever.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what you're saying is pretty close to being true. I think it's one very likely scenario. We were just in an event, Tim. We haven't talked too much about it, but there was a lot said there. There was a lot said at the event at the Bitcoin Day down in Naples. Big shout out to John for helping us get down there and making it happen. It was a very fun, very cool educational event. And we made some new contacts, we made some new friends. But one of the narratives that was kind of brought around by his name was Bitcoin Ben, was kind of similar to what you're saying. And I don't know if you remember this exact part, but he was kind of saying something similar, where it was almost like in 1929, right, is when the U.S. government said, "Hey, everybody who has gold, we're confiscating your gold." Right, I may be off on the dates, but essentially that was kind of the edict, and a lot of people were like, "Hey, well, I'm gonna follow the law. I'm gonna send in my gold to the government," right? And then mysteriously, the price of gold shot up after that happened, right? And a lot of folks think, or Bitcoin Ben thinks at least, that that's what's about to happen. Is that, and this probably won't happen, in my opinion, kind of modifying his theory, it's probably not going to happen this year, right? I think like I just saw a chat, there's a lot more manipulation, there's a lot more volatility to play out before it starts to go into this phase, right? But Bitcoin Ben's thesis is that, basically the institutions gain control of a lot of Bitcoin, probably not approaching the majority, but a lot of it, and then they spike up the price. And so the rest of the world, like you're saying, our family members, people who don't really understand Bitcoin and its scarcity, they're kind of left out, right? So they're buying Bitcoin at $200,000, $300,000 per coin, right? And so they're left out of the wealth building potential, because then once it gets up there, similar to the price chart of gold, right, it just kind of hangs out and maybe has volatility of like 20% every year and a half, right, up and down. And so there's not really much to trade. So that's another scenario that's kind of similar to what you're saying.
That's the point. It's like, this is like, we are in the days. It sounds so dramatic, but I believe this with 100% of my being. We are in the last days of the great buying opportunities of Bitcoin. I'm not saying they won't be decent, and the goal is to build wealth in this great stage, to where in the future, I'm not saying I'm never going to sell my Bitcoin, guys. I have plans to sell Bitcoin at the top to do some rearranging, but I'm going to be building my wealth at such a level where the goal is, even if I sell 80% of my Bitcoin holding at one point to explore a different business venture, I'm going to make so much money from that business venture that I'm not going to come over and be buying, $20 a Bitcoin, $50 a Bitcoin. Like, I'll have the wealth to be buying in the future. $50,000 of Bitcoin is my DCA, just because I'm making money on my businesses, my investments, and I'm just DCing all this money over to Bitcoin. And yeah, at that time, my $50,000, whereas right now, $50,000 will buy me 1+ Bitcoin, 1 point, whatever that is. I'm not doing the perfect math in my head. Yeah, in the future, I'm talking about buying, 0.2 Bitcoin, 0.1 Bitcoin. But if I'm DCAing like that, I'll still be acquiring more and more and more. Whereas, again, at that level, the thought is, if I'm making that kind of money, if I'm having those kinds of business ventures, I'm in a higher level of wealth where I can do those moves. Somebody who's, again, in a spot where they're living paycheck to paycheck, where they're barely making ends meet, they're going to look at this and say, so I could DCA $20 a month into Bitcoin, and that's going to do what for me in the future? You know what? I'm going to spend the extra $20 on another meal at Taco Bell that will satisfy my stomach right now. More so because I don't have that, I'd have to, this $20, I'd have to wait for, literally decades before it's actually worth anything, versus right now we're in a place where it's like, man, $20 in a cryptocurrency could be worth a lot of money if you just let it sit a year, 2 years, depending on what you chose. Even Bitcoin, as little volatility as that is, $20 in Bitcoin is going to be turning into like, 150, 160, by the time it's all said and done, when we get up here. But that's going to be, here in a couple of years, that's not going to be the same game in the future. People will be less incentivized. They'll have this spirit of like, yeah, it's somewhat of an increase, but it's not enough to make me jump. Screw it. Let the wealthy keep investing in Bitcoin. I'm just going to continue to live paycheck to paycheck. And when I die, I die. And that's just a sad reality, that this is an opportunity for people to get out of that reality. And yet, with BlackRock in the game doing what they're doing, you're absolutely right. And I think Bitcoin Ben was absolutely right. There is a great opportunity, but they're manipulating the space right now with this wealth. I saw Eric Wallen say BlackRock doesn't buy Bitcoin. They just buy enough for shares through a third party. First of all, I do think BlackRock's going to buy some for themselves anyway, Eric, but the truth is that's enough. Like, the amount that the demand that they're creating for their wealthy investors, but the fact that those investors will not own a single penny, they'll own all the risk, and BlackRock will own all the wealth.
Yeah. So look, I don't remember Bitcoin Ben's argument verbatim. We need to have him on. I've got his contact. I've got his contact info. We definitely need to have him on. I think it would be awesome to have him come on and tell it. I think his voice is recovering because he was very enthusiastic and he had already lost his voice. But it's so, Eric Wallen, you bring up a good point, right? That they can't buy it all. And no, I don't think they can buy it all. I think there's too many hardcore diamond hands in the space for them to get even, probably even 30% of the Bitcoin at this point. However, there's a lot that you can still do. Not from like a blockchain standpoint. We're not talking about a 51% attack. That's not what's going on here. But when you can control and help to manage, right, is the kind of the phrase that Wall Street would use, help to manage people's money, right, you can start to control quite a bit of it, and that can have ripple second, third order effects. Now, for those, I pulled up some info really quickly because I wanted to show you guys something. Tim, were you going to say something?
Let me comment on that, because
go for it.
When you say they can't own them all, what you're saying is they can't own 21 million, and that's absolutely right. But guess what, guys? there's not 21 million Bitcoin in circulation. There will never be 21 million in circulation. It's widely believed that probably at least 3 million are lost forever, and we have no idea where they are. Then there's a large portion, a million, that belong to Satoshi Nakamoto, that wallet will never move. Then you have your Michael Saylors of the world. You have these big entities that understand the power of leverage in the future and owning wealth. They are never going to sell their Bitcoin. They're going to leverage in shares, and they're going to have opportunities to be able to create their own things where it's like, hey, you can invest in my company. You can invest in this. We have all the Bitcoin. We're going to make wealth. They don't have to part with a single Satoshi to make money. So what I'm talking about, what they can own all of, they can own all of the circulating Bitcoin that is left. I think I saw something recently that in reality, we're talking about probably 5 million Bitcoins are in circulation. That's it. The rest is spoken for in wallets that will never move. BlackRock will move it when it's convenient for them to move it, but with them owning a large portion and at the right times owning all of that circulating Bitcoin, and the only way to buy Bitcoin at this point now is to actually go and buy an ETF from BlackRock themselves. Again, I'm going to buy the risk, but they're going to keep the rewards. I'm going to pay them to hold the actual wealth, where I just have this IOU, this ETF that really is not the wealth. It's going to make me feel good because I'll think it's worth something, but ultimately, when we say, can they buy it all? They can. They can get all the circulating supply. We could see them put an end to exchanges, decentralized and centralized entities. The Coinbases of the world could be gone unless their only purpose is to hold BlackRock's Bitcoin. The DEXs of the world that hold Bitcoin will be gone. Maybe they'll still be around holding other altcoins, but they're not going to be offering Bitcoin. You will lose the opportunity to purchase actual Bitcoin that gets into a cold wallet, because every single circulating Bitcoin will be in either a Wales wallet, who they don't want to move it and they're going to leverage that, or they're going to put it into BlackRock's, where if I want to go get that, I have to go buy an ETF. That's the reality of what BlackRock is trying to get accomplished. Is there ways to stopping that to happen? I think there is. I think there's a lot of great entities out there that are aware of threats to the greatness of Bitcoin, and they're working to educate people and help people, and even maybe create a system where there is circulating Bitcoin, but it could protect it from ever getting into the hands of the elite and the wealthy. But my point is, if we just keep trucking along and thinking everything's okay, Bitcoin's going to be here forever, I'll always be able to just go out and buy another Bitcoin. No. The answer to that is no. 21 million is a great thing for one purpose, and that is that we have a fixed money, but it's not a great thing in the sense of, at a certain point, if the wealthy get their hands on it and refuse to part, there's no more for the rest of us. Now we're still begging in the streets, hoping that they cut us a check, hoping that they give us the honor of purchasing one of their ETFs so that we can try to help build a little bit of wealth. Yeah. That's the reality of what BlackRock's trying to build.
So really quick, I want to show you guys something that underpins all of these arguments, because you may be listening to this and most of the chat is kind of agreeing with us quite emphatically, right? But you might be listening to this with a little bit of a skeptical thought here, and that's good. You should definitely question everything, and that's good. That's a good approach. But Tim, I have a question for you before I show you kind of the underpinning of kind of this argument that we're making, a little bit of proof, behind kind of what we're saying here. Do you like being hacked?
It's not pleasurable. No, I don't say that I do.
So you don't like being hacked. Do you like being scammed?
No, I actually dislike it.
What about phished? Do you like clicking on phish links in your email or Twitter?
It's no. I would rather go fishing than be fished.
Oh, that's hilarious, Tim. Do you like to keep important information on your devices, whether it be your phone or your laptop or desktop computer at home?
I do need to have some important information on those, yes.
Well, Tim, you answered all those questions in a way that would actually classify you to be a great user of NordVPN, who actually is sponsoring this episode of the Investing Bros live stream. And Tim, you don't like being hacked. You don't like being scammed. And chances are, if you're listening to the sultry sound of my voice, you don't like those things either. You don't like those things happening to you. Well, right now, if you act, you get 63% off a cyber tool that can actually protect you from being hacked, from being scammed, and from phishing. With NordVPN, you stay safer online with the leading VPN service. It can detect malware during downloads and even block trackers and intrusive ads. And right now, when you click on the link in our description, you get 63% off. It's an exclusive offer, and I believe it ends in January, so you have to act now. Now, Tim, if you set up this NordVPN account and you don't like it, it's risk-free. You get 30-day money-back guarantee. You set it up, you see the benefits, you see the security, and you feel good. You feel an enhanced sense of security.
Also, and it looks like when you buy it, you go snowboarding and you laugh really hard with your significant other while holding your phones because it's so secure.
Yeah, people, literally attractive women will flock to you because of how secure your mobile devices are. They'll say, "Oh man, that's a secure looking male right there." And then I wouldn't be surprised if she wasn't ready to get down on a knee right there and propose marriage. It's a beautiful thing. NordVPN. Go ahead and click the link in the description. At least go check it out for yourself. You have everything to gain and nothing to lose with that 30-day money-back guarantee. In April 5th, 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt, some people are actually fans of this guy, he issued an executive order 6102, which required Americans to turn in their gold coins, bullion certificates to the Federal Reserve. Just imagine, Tim, and I'm going to take the politics away from this for a second. Just imagine if Donald Trump, Barack Obama, or Joe Biden, or even George W. Bush, right? One of these presidents, it doesn't matter which one, but imagine they came on television, ABC News, CBS, ABC, and they said, "Ladies and gentlemen, the American people, we have to ask something of you. We need you to take a patriotic step in supporting your country. The reason for this order is to stop the hoarding of gold because it's stalling the American economic growth and worsening the Great Depression." At the time, that was what they were dealing with. Just imagine if that came over the airwaves. That would absolutely shock people. Think of the TIK TOKs. Ain't nobody getting my gold, right? Yeah. Think of the insanity that it would erupt. Well, back then, they did it. They just complied. Most people, from historical records, they complied because of a $10,000 fine and up to 10 years in prison, Tim. 10, that's insane. This is actual real history. Now, what happened immediately after that, right? So the edict came out in 1933. Immediately after that, by February 1933, the price of gold had gone up 64%. So you had a pretty immediate spike, right? But then after that, right, this is going back all the way to 1933, which goes back quite a ways. But after that, you'd see the price of gold go up 1,600%, right? And that's just through 1980. Right? I have to scroll out even further. We do a lot of zoom outs on crypto charts, and they're pretty impressive. You've kind of lost sight of 1933. It's way back here, right? Yeah. But let's go ahead and try to do it a little bit here. This is a 34,000% increase since the confiscation of gold. Now, of course, you're allowed
340x.
You're allowed to own gold now, and that's great. Probably if we lost the Second Amendment, we probably still wouldn't be able to own gold, right? But ultimately here, guys, this is kind of what Bitcoin Ben's thesis is. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm still processing it. I'm still kind of thinking it through. But he makes some really compelling points, and there's a lot of smart people that agree with him, which is what we could be at the very early stages of the powers that be. Forget the names that we know, BlackRock and the Federal Reserve and the Treasury. We could be entering a phase where the powers that be that look 30, 50, 100 years, 200 years into the future and say, these are the pieces of the actual game, and this is how we're going to play them, right, to benefit us, whoever that is, right? I'm not going to speculate on who that is. I think you probably know who it is for yourself, right? Yeah. But we could be seeing the very beginning of a brand new digital game that is being played. You're already seeing a lot of value on the internet. Where? Google.com. You know how much that domain costs, right? It's not like we're in the very first inning, right? But we are well into a brand new game of world power dynamics, and Bitcoin does seem to be like it just got swallowed into that game. And so those of us who actually own it and have it in a cold wallet, I think we are very similar to the folks who looked at the government And I'm not advocating breaking the law in the United States or anywhere else, but they looked at the government's edict back in 1933. They said, hey, FDR, come take my gold, right? And there wasn't that many people that did it because of the steep penalty, the $10,000 fine, the 10 years in prison, right? I don't think anybody's going to come confiscating your Bitcoin anytime soon, but like Tim said, they can make it hard. In the United States, they've made it hard for people to acquire spot Bitcoin and put it on cold wallets. They've already done that through Operation Choke Point and through other means, right? So I don't know exactly, I'm not going to claim to know exactly how all the pieces of the puzzle are going to come together and how the next 200 years are going to unfold. That would be very foolish. Anybody who claims to say that, you need to definitely check them out. But that's kind of a little bit of the proof of the underpinning of what we're talking about here. Going very quickly, Larry Fink, going very quickly within the span of 2 years from calling Bitcoin, kind of taking the same position that Jamie Dimon holds today, calling Bitcoin just a tool of criminals, then calling it a flight to quality just within 2 years, it's a little suspicious, right? It's a little suspicious, and at the very least, it is going to make me even more confident in holding my Bitcoin.
Yeah, you asked me, that was you said, what would I do if the government came? I would invite them to play a little game that is I think a lot of people would invite them to play the little game called Sugma. It's a new game taking the world by storm, and that's my plan. But yeah, it's a good case right there, because again, there's gonna be a lot of sheep who are like, oh yeah, I'm not allowed to own this. Oh yeah, I'll give it over to the government. Yeah, that sounds like a good thing to do. And then they're gonna do it. I think a lot of people are going to have some boating accidents. I think a lot of people are going to say, no, thank you. And that's what's cool about Bitcoin. Again, unlike gold, where they could break into your house and actually find physical gold, I'm not saying impossible, but it's really hard for them if you know what you're doing. If you own Bitcoin in a cold wallet and you know how to deal with it, it'll be pretty hard for them to actually physically confiscate it from you. So I don't predict that would happen, but if it did, I don't predict it to be successful. With that said, though, T-Shroom, it's been a great discussion. Actually, the discussion lasts a lot longer than I thought it would. Thank you, every single one of you guys who are in here. Go ahead and smash that like button if you enjoyed this conversation, if you've enjoyed the show. Go ahead and put in the comment section, if the government came to you and told you to give them your Bitcoin, how would you respond to them? Keep it as clean as possible. I know mine was a little bit on the edgy side, but I didn't explain the joke. Hopefully some of you guys got it. Let's go on and do some TA here. Before we do some TA, though, because we have 10 minutes left here, T-Shroom, do we have a factoid of the day as we kind of transition out of the news and our discussion into some technical analysis?
Absolutely. We have a factoid of the day, Tim. And that factoid of the day, of course, brought to you by NordVPN. We talked about them a little earlier. That link is still very much in the description for you guys to go check out. Supports the channel. And after everything we're talking about, you're going to want to maximize your safety online, guys, for sure. Let's take a look here. Comedian John William Farrell, maybe you've heard of him, is a part owner in a championship-winning Los Angeles team that belongs to what league, Tim? Is it A, the NBA, B, the NFL, C, the MLB, or D, the MLS?
That's a good question. He likes all of these sports, and I'm leaning towards MLS because that's the cheapest one to buy. But I could see him, I don't know, the Dodgers, that would be a little too expensive for the Dodgers, even though he is a big Dodgers fan. I'm going to say MLS. I think that even though you're saying part owner, I could see him, it does say he's a part owner in champion. He's not an owner of the NFL or NBA. He's not a Laker or a Rams or Well, he could be they're not a winning team, so the Chargers don't count. It's between MLB and MLS, and I'm going to imagine it's a cheaper route. He went MLS. But I know he enjoys every single one of those sports. What is it? I'm curious to know the actual answer.
All right, Tim, is locking in.
Matt C says MLS, and he lives in Los Angeles, so I feel good about this answer. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, MLS, Tim, you've locked it in. Let's find out what NordVPN's factoid of the day is. It's the MLS. Look at that. Tim got the dub in 2022. Los Angeles FC, the Major League Soccer, of which Will Ferrell is part owner, won the MLS Cup, thus giving him an MLS championship to his credit. That's a strangely worded sentence, but it is on the official Wikipedia page there for Will Ferrell, everybody's favorite comedian. There you go, Tim. How about that?
All right. Well, as some people have noticed, I think Dave Digital pointed it out, we did turn on monetization today. So if you got kicked out by an ad, which I am seeing, I saw a concurrent drop here a second. Come on right back in. We turned it back on. If you guys want us to turn those back off, purchase a VPN. And then when enough VPNs are sold, we'll be able to turn that monetization back off. And
That's
then
right.
We won't have to deal with ads on YouTube. Let's talk about Bitcoin here, guys. I told you guys we had come back up into a range that was a former support level that we lost here last week. We hit our heads. Let's take a look at some of our other indicators. Now, there was a nice little order block here that we came in and touched as well. So that's part of the reason why we also had the equilibrium. This is the Lux Algo indicator package. Another thing, if you guys are looking to get into charts and trading, check out Lux Algo. We had an equilibrium set in this spot. What is the equilibrium? Well, the most recent of this trend on the hourly chart kind of started up here towards 42. We kind of found a base right there. We hit a nice high, but then with the most recent lows, the discount zone now down at 38.5, the middle point, equilibrium. Great spot for price to pull back right in that spot. We absolutely did. Wicked a little above it, but as a whole, rejected right in that area. We're filling an order block now down right beneath us at this point. We could see a double bottom come back in. In fact, there's a lot there. When you're looking at it, of all the order blocks in the hourly time frame, 38% of the money that's exchanging hands right now is exchanged hands all the way down here at 38.6. Now, there's a little bit of a compliment there saying, hey, since that's the bottom of this range, there was a decent amount of bulls here ready to buy, which gives this area some stronger support levels. I still think what we were coming to do is kind of fill this one. I told you guys the other day, I think there's a decent chance we're making a move back up to some of these higher levels. In fact, the higher levels could take us all the way up even closer towards 43,000, 44. I talked about this on the high block. Let's take a look at Bitcoin here. You can see heavy liquidations. We have some nice liquidations coming in around 42.3, but we start to really see them slow down up here at 43.5, a little run just highly above those, which you don't usually ever stop right at liquidations. Little run above those does see 44. There's still some interest in that zone. So when I take a look here and I see a massive order block up here at 43, and I take a look here at liquidations and see we have high liquidations all the way above 43 and still some interesting stuff potentially up to 45, that 44,000 looks to be an interesting spot. Of course, as you zoom out and you take a look maybe at a larger time frame, like say the 4-hour chart, 44,000 is not necessarily, which by the way, guys, that's going to put us right back towards the 4 hours equilibrium zone. It's not necessarily something that is that amazing. It's actually just, what do we call this? A dead cat bounce. Prices fall quickly, and when they do that quickly, you do see a little bit of a fight action, a bounce reaction, where the bulls take control for a short period of time. These are the perfect shakeout scenarios that mess with the mind of the retail investor. We saw this happen like crazy in a time period that you guys know that I've compared us to quite a lot here, but we're going to do it once again. Coming back over to 2019, look at the volatility of all this price action. Bitcoin, after rallying over 300, I think it was almost 400%, pulled back over a period of time between June and December of 2019, 50%, but it didn't do it in a straight line. We had all of these bounces. And that is the volatility that we come to expect here in the world of Bitcoin. And so right now, after losing a very important support level here just 2 days ago, this $40,000 support level, we bounced on a nice, solid next level of strong support. We're now making a play up to it. Are we going to be rejected at this level? Is this not the serious dead cat bounce? Or do we go ahead and take this time, this opportunity to make one more move to the upside? A couple levels also, I know some people have looked at 45,000 as a potential spot to keep your eye on. The reason for that is that's going to be a value area high right here in a fixed range volume profile. Point of control coming in at 42.7. We talked about that one, I think, on some of the lower time frames. We did see order blocks at equilibriums in that order block coming in at that level around 42.7. But on this longer time frame, again, best case scenario, guys, I think that we see a move back up to 45 at this point. While there's technically always the chance you go a little bit higher, I think with the momentum and the trend that we are setting now, this move back, we still have a massive monkey on our back, as we kind of got into yesterday, with a lot of bears selling, with Grayscale selling off, with Mt. Gox selling off, with even the large portion of buyers coming to space simply just buying over the counter. So they're not really putting bullish pressure into the actual exchanges to boost the price up. I think we'd be pretty lucky to get back up here to 45 if I am being real with you. But it is there on the table. To me, I feel a lot more confident, though, if you're looking for a potential long scalp, that area between, look at this peak right here, 44,000, where we see some volume, and 42.7, that's going to be the range I'm looking for potentially to take some profit on a long scalp. I don't think I'm waiting for a value area high, even though it's potentially in the cards. After that, though, again, we start our trajectory on our way down. Again, the next big stop, if we end up losing around $38,000, $37,000, next stop is going to be coming in down here towards 34, our good spot. I saw an article today, T-Shroom, that Arthur Hayes, who actually made a pretty decent call. He doesn't call levels very well necessarily, but he did make a decent call about taking your profits from Solana and turning them into Ethereum. You know, both those coins are down now, but for their portion there, Ethereum made a nice push to the upside while Solana was a little more lackluster. And if you had made that move, even though your earnings would be down, Ethereum has not dropped dramatically as Solana. Of course, Solana touching up towards $120, now trading about 86. Ethereum got up to about 2,600, pushed toward 27, is trading at 2,200 as we speak. But either way, you would have been able to save a lot more of those profits. He is calling for a move between 30,000 and 34,000. So he's kind of called between our ranges, our great buy spot here on 30, our good spot here on 34. He's saying that's the range that we're looking at to pull back. And again, with his more recent call on Ethereum being pretty good, I tend to see that as another level of kind of support to that range being a great place to be acquiring some more Bitcoin. Let's go ahead and do this. We got 4 minutes left. What altcoins do you guys want to take a look at? What do you want to see some charts on? Again, if you guys want to see some TA, we're doing some TA every single morning in my morning video upload. We also in our members Discord. You guys can become a member today. Go hit that join button. We're constantly talking about trading opportunities. If you ever ask me and say, "Hey Tim, what are you thinking about this coin?" When I find the time to be able to do so, I have a job I have to get through, and during the day, I try to give you guys as much TA expertise as I can, even making some videos from time to time. So make sure if you guys want to see a lot more TA on altcoins, come check it out on the Discord. Come become a member and come in and request. Ask what you want to see. But I'm giving you guys a couple of minutes here. What do you guys want to see some coins on?
Tim,
Matt's saying I'm buying Solana if it gets back to $79.
Tim, while the tickers are trickling in here, I have a TA question for you. So the definition here of a hammer candlestick is a pattern in candlestick charting that occurs trading significantly lower than its opening, but rallies within the period to close near the opening price. And when I jump over here to Solana, yesterday's candlestick kind of fits that category, right? If I look at AVAX, it a little bit less so, right, for yesterday's candle. But Bitcoin is very squarely in that camp. So I haven't heard you talk too much about the candlestick bodies and kind of the pattern they may be showing, but we've certainly seen it before. I mean, I can even take a look at a lot of charts and I can show you that. What are your thoughts on the candlestick pattern?
I'll put it this way. I want to say I'm aware of candlesticks, formations, and patterns. Sometimes they play even into the pattern of an actual a formation pattern with trend lines and everything. In cryptocurrencies, this is what you need to understand about technical analysis. Technical analysis is not an exact science that is like, oh, well, we just saw a bullish candle, so we have to have bullish price action. No, the candles just tell us a story of the momentum and movements of where prices are going to help us get a decent understanding of the psychology of the other traders, right? When it comes to altcoins, and Solana is a fairly well-traded altcoin, so this is one I could give some credit to, but if you ever try to use that kind of technical analysis on smaller traded concepts and coins, you're gonna get tricked out because there's not enough people and volume trading it for mass psychology to come into play. When I look at that formation, that hammer you're discussing here, T-Shirt, let's take a look at it on Solana. I'm going to get rid of this line because it's going to block it here. What this tells me is that there's a lot of negative pressure coming down, right? The candle body opens. We make a slight move to the upside. In fact, we actually have a little bit of a bounce. At some point, we have a really big fall to the downside, but ultimately, there was enough buying pressure to come in to push price back up and create this little hammer. And then the next candle, right now, it has not closed. We have about 3 more hours. It's moving up the up direction. This is showing a movement, a bouncing movement where we have temporarily bottomed out. The problem is, though, is that while that's the story it's telling, it is just not impossible. It's not hard for the continuation of this pattern to move to downside. What I don't like here, I'll tell you this right now, if this volume was a lot higher, if we saw increased volume, then I would make a stronger case that this was a strong reversal candle. But it's not. That volume's pretty modest at best. Ultimately, again, dead cat bounce. I think, on the daily chart, we have an order block back up at 100. I think that's being generous. On the 4 hour, I think we have one as high as 95. Let's take a look here. 93, 94. If you go over to High Block Capital, which is going to talk about liquidations, let's take a look at what Solana's 7-day is saying. I believe it has some interesting liquidations right above $95, but that's going to be about it. When I come out to these longer time frames, like 1 month, 3 month, there's still a lot. Oh, look at that. 1 month, 3 month. Yeah, we got some nice ones above us right now. Let's go 3 months. I think is where I was looking at last time I was looking. We have some very interesting ones below us. When you kind of zoom out to a very large scale, again, Solana's going to move up into the right long term. We're going to have an amazing bull market. But we have some interesting liquidations, definitely down here towards below 60, definitely here towards 51. There are some down here towards 38. If you went back over, if you guys watched my Solana video I made here the other day, we discussed some of these levels. I did talk about the one that I think I like the most is coming in here towards this $50 level. This, of course, would be a golden pocket pullback for Solana. Also in range with what we see happen in these pre-halving bull markets. This would give us almost a 60% pullback. A lot of you guys know I had predicted that even during the rally. I said, guys, when we pull back, do not be surprised to see historical movements like Bitcoin pulling back 30 to 40%. We see potentially altcoins anywhere between 40 to 60%. And the higher they rallied, the more severe their pullbacks could be. I think Solana is a great coin candidate for a 60% pullback back down below $60, somewhere in this range around 50. Matt C is pointing up at something. Did somebody say something? I love a good bedtime story. I don't know. I don't know. What if I'm from Croatia. Can you tell me where ADA stopped dumping so I can buy more? Thank you, guys. It's 4:02. We got to wrap it out. But here's what's cool is we talked about Solana. We've talked about Cardano. This week, I've been going through, and it's probably going to continue to next week. I'm going through a lot of the more favorite altcoins and telling you guys where I'm looking to buy next. I lay out all the levels, just like I did with Bitcoin. What are some good levels to buy? What are some great levels to buy? What are some awesome levels? What are some worst case scenarios? But ultimately, where am I going to be buying more of these coins? We have a Cardano video for that. We have a Solana video. We have a Chainlink video. In the next couple of days, continue to tell me what you want to see, but I'm thinking I'm going to be doing an Ethereum video, an AVAX video, a Matic video. What are some other ones you guys want to see? Make sure to drop those in the comments. Let me know in our Discord, and I'll give those a look, and you guys will see those videos over the next couple of days. With that said, though, it is definitely time to go ahead and wrap out today's show. T-Shroom, you're laughing. I will let you what's so funny? Did I miss something?
There is a TikTok. Sometimes I scroll. I scroll. Look at this guy working. He's at the Planet Fitness working on his rifle.
This is good form. This is good form, and this is definitely a needed movement. There's nothing funny. That's legit. That's a good guy right there. I'll have some. We'll get some chicken wings. We'll talk about the future, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Smash the like button on your way out. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already. We're less than 400 subscribers away from another $100 giveaway. Make sure you're subscribed though, so you can enter to win. Guys, we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.
Trying to make paper, turn that better to cake. Money like Lego, connect the dots that bank. We are investing bros. We are investing bros. Army pipe, lethal on trade. Entries and exits, worthy of praise. Tim, the professor of the TA. Shout it out loud on the PA. T-Shrooms news, got the word. doing better than what he deserves. Beamer, leave no evidence. Soon fly coop with his dividends. Trying to make paper, turn that better to cake. Money like Lego, connect the dots that bank. We are investing bros. We are investing bros.